Our second reading comes from the Gospel of Luke. Listen for God's word to you. In those days, a decree went out from Emperor Augustus that all the world should be registered. This was the first registration and was taken while Quirinius was governor of Syria. All went to their own towns to be registered. Joseph also went from the town of Nazareth in Galilee to Judea, to the city of David called Bethlehem, because he was descended from the house and family of David. He went to be registered with Mary, to whom he was engaged and who was expecting a child. While they were there, the time came for her to deliver her child, and she gave birth to her firstborn son and wrapped him in bands of cloth and laid him in a manger, because there was no place for them in the inn. This is the word of God. They were scratching at his door like animals in the night. They were scratching at his door like animals in the night. "Go away," he growled, pulling the furs up over his head, settling down further into the warmth of his straw bed. See, he had been dreaming. He had been dreaming of another life, a past life, when his daughter would laugh at every face he would make, and his wife didn't laugh at every failure, his every mistake. He was dreaming of another life without camels that spit, men bedded down in that pit. No ins, only outside. The night sky filled with every star under heaven. And when he went away to that cave where his animals lay, and he lifted his face up into that light, and it poured over him, rich, heavy, and bright. Everything felt possible. Everything. Even for him. But, there it was again. They were scratching at his door like animals in the night, so like a man itching for a fight, he tore himself out of that beautiful dream. Expecting men with camels from long distance travels, he slammed open the door, but instead found them. That young couple in obvious trouble, their eyes pleading for help. And when he saw the way they held each other, he knew exactly who they were. An echoing reverie reverberating through memory. They were ancient, these two entwined, as close as God's breath hovering over the depths, as full of life as God's word searing and singing the world into shape. When he saw Joseph's face, he saw the look of every other man in his place, wanting to run, scream inside and hide, but he was not going to let that show. He was not going to let anyone know. So instead, he donned the mask of the Father's face, once assumed, never entirely displaced. His appearance, now an assurance that he would not leave her side. He would find some way, any way, to provide. The old man, seeing this, felt one shoe begin to shift and slip from off the foot of his calloused heart. And then, seeing in the young woman's hands the hands of every other mother as she stands there, strong hands cradled around the baby in her belly, wrapped more to display than to defend. See, she had walked over 80 miles through the desert, across fear, past every shame. So now her eyes stared into his, unblinking, thinking she was done looking down. She knew the sound of her own name. And somehow, somewhere inside of him, the second shoe slipped. His heart now hallowed, humbled on holy ground. He thought about all those who had stood at his door tired travelers rich but poor in timing, having more of everything but him, except this Cataluma, this guest room, was his. His the keys to this tiny kingdom. But before he could growl, he had no room. Crushing this late-coming, sleep-interrupting bride and groom, there was another scratching sound. But this time the sound came not from the door, but from within. The scratching sound came from inside him, deep from within his discalced heart. Now tender and feeling again for the first time since he could remember when. And then, like he was dreaming, sleepwalking, he told them to put their money away, save it for some other day. And he took them out past the camels that spit, past the men bedded down in that pit. He took them away to the cave where his animals lay, and under the night sky, naked and filled with every star under heaven. And when he lifted his face up into that light, and it poured over him thick, heavy, and bright, he knew everything was possible. Everything. Even for them in that moment, on that silent, holy night. I wrote this piece for the Innkeeper because it's a story that many people know pretty well. If you were to go around and ask people, hey, tell me the Christmas story, they'd probably tell you some version of Luke's story. Right? Joseph and Mary are hanging out in Nazareth, doing whatever Nazareans do. And then the government goes crazy at Christmas time. Can you believe it? The government goes crazy. Caesar apparently needs more money. I don't know. But they call for a census. A census either raises an army or money. And so all the men have to go back to their towns, and Joseph and a very pregnant fiancée, awkward, have to go to their family in Bethlehem. But she's very pregnant and very slow. And so you know the story. By the time they get there, there's nothing available. The Best Western is full up. They wind up on that road that like every small town has, either into or out of it, where the real sketchy motels are. They wind up on that one, the one where you're outside going, my car, or... But there's no vacancy. Finally, Joseph's desperate, and he knocks on the door, and you know who pops out. I've seen this so many times. It's the innkeeper. He is always wearing a bathrobe. I have no idea why the innkeeper is always wearing a bathrobe, but he is. And he has one line in the play. No room at the inn. And then there are two dramatic possibilities. See, I have seen a lot of Christmas plays. It's one of the hazards of being a pastor. There are two things you can do with the innkeeper at that point. In the past, when we were kind of a tougher bunch, we just let the innkeeper be a jerk. And so it was no room at the inn, and that was it. And then Joseph and Mary just kind of have to go off on their own and find a random barn. Today, we're a little kinder, we're a little gentler. Our children yesterday, the innkeeper is still kind of a jerk. No room. He's not letting them in. He's not going to make room in the hallway. But he feels bad. And apparently this innkeeper not only has a motel, but he has a barn too, which archaeologists say is a little weird. But he says, hey, you can use my barn. And so he's still a jerk, but he's a little nicer. The innkeeper is always a stand-in for us in these plays. The innkeeper is always a stand-in for the parts of us that are not our best. The parts of us that they're like a toddler, if you've had a toddler, where they do not share naturally. Children are not nice creatures, naturally. They're like the seagulls, right, from Finding Nemo. Mine, mine, mine. And unfortunately, even though we age, right, that part of us is still in us. It's the part of us that we can be the richest country in the world, the most powerful country in the world, right? And our problem is not that we don't have enough, right? I mean, our problem is actually we have so much that it's killing us. I looked it up. Top 10 causes of death for Americans. Number 1, heart disease. We're not worried about finding enough calories. Our problem, and we've all come from Christmas Eve fests, right? We've eaten and drinking, we're married, that's awesome, we should do that. But oh my gosh, our challenge is we have so much it's killing us. But that doesn't stop us from still being really frightened and worried at any threat that anybody anywhere could possibly take something away from us. We still have that part of us inside of us. So even when a Guatemalan family is trying to spare their child from violence, right, and winds up on our border, we're worried because it might possibly take something away from us, even though we've got so much. Now, it leads to cartoonists, artists, creating images like this. It's called Jose y Maria, and you can't see all the details in here, but it's Joseph trying to find a space. It's Mary on one of those horrible children's playthings that they put outside. It says it's broken down, and they're always broken down. My children are like, give me a quarter, I'm like, I don't have one, but even if I did, it's not working. And there are some people who say, oh, Ken, come on. Mary and Joseph, they're not refugees. Well, that's from Luke, you're right. But if you read Matthew's gospel, Matthew reminds us, when they're in Bethlehem, Herod wants to kill all the children under 2. And so for their child's safety, they have to flee and become migrants, and they go down to Egypt until the threat is over. And it's only after that's how they wind up in Nazareth in Matthew's gospel. But this is all so grand and large, and it's Christmas. I'll just be personal. I have this selfish side in me that's alive and well. I can remember when I was dating Melissa, my wife, this bizarre thing happened. I don't know if this has happened for you, but we would go to a restaurant because we were young and we could eat everything back then. It was fine. And at the end, I'd say, hey, do you want to get dessert? And she'd say, no, I'm fine. And I'd say, well, I want some dessert. And I would order a dessert. Do you know what she did? She would take her spoon, her fork. She would cross the line of the table and start eating my dessert. Oh, if I could have funded a border wall between my plate. I mean, you couldn't have gotten over, under, and the brownies are the worst, all right? Brownies with ice cream. You know how to eat them. It's in the Bible. You make every piece of ice cream and brownie match up, right? So that at the end, you have ice cream with your brownie. No, that's not how Melissa eats. She likes the ice cream. She would eat all of the ice cream, leaving me dry brownie. What do you do with dry brownie? I'm still working that out. So we've got this part. I get the innkeeper kind of calling us out at this season when we have so much. But what if the story about the innkeeper isn't actually true? I mean, what if the way we've been reading Luke for so long with this grumpy innkeeper, what if it's not true? Normally we print out the text so I could give you a homework assignment. really quick one, because I'd say open your text up. And because I read fast sometimes and I'm careless and I skip over stuff. But I would ask you to look for where the innkeeper is in the text. Where's the term innkeeper? Yeah, it's not there. I was super careful this week and made sure I was right. There's actually no innkeeper as a term there. And Luke knows the word. It's pandakios in Greek. It means a person who welcomes all, pandakios. It's a beautiful word. And Luke knows the word because in Luke 10, he talks about an innkeeper. There are people bugging Jesus saying, all right, you say we have to be good neighbors. Well, who's our neighbor, Jesus? They want a list. And he's like, oh. He says, once, there was a good guy, there was a good Israelite. He was going along the highway like Joseph and Mary, but he was beset by robbers. He was beaten badly, almost killed. They took everything that they had. Oh, but wait, it sounds bad. It's good because there is a priest coming along the way. There's a priest walking along down the road. The priest is a good guy. He's going to help. I don't know what was going on with the priest. I don't know if he was busy or just uncomfortable, having a bad day, but he actually crosses the road as he's walking down. So he doesn't even have to get near this man bleeding on the side. I've done this in a way. If you've been driving along and there's a homeless person on the side, and I've not had something to give, but I've had moments where I wouldn't even make eye contact. I've pretended like there was something really fascinating up ahead of me, and I could feel the gaze, and it was uncomfortable, and it didn't feel good to me. And I've had friends that I know experiencing homelessness saying, hey, sometimes I don't really want anything. It's just to acknowledge my humanity. And there have been times when I haven't even been able to do that. That's like the priest crossing the side of the road. But wait. It's not all bad. There's a Levite coming. And I'm not going to go into the differences between a priest and a Levite tonight. Call me about that. Please don't. A Levite, also a good guy, is coming down. Surely he's going to help. But he's definitely in a hurry. Because he is booking it, and he gets to the man. He leaps over him. He hurdles the man. And the guy's still bleeding out. And that's when the story gets bad. Dark bad. Because that's when a Samaritan comes. Yes, no, it's okay, I promise. A Samaritan comes. And a Samaritan is a stand-in for the worst person that you know in your life. The worst person you can imagine. A person who's not only not going to help you or help anyone, but would probably do you harm if they had a chance. That's who the Samaritan is in your life. I don't know who that is. But it's holiday time. We've got lots of family. Lots of people you can choose from. The Samaritan's coming, and it's bad. He stops. And he's messing with the body. And you're like, what's he doing? He's going through his pockets. What, to find anything the robbers left? But no, he's picking the man up. And he carries him all the way to a pendakion, a hotel, and he distributes him to the pendakios, the innkeeper. And he goes into his own pocket and he pulls out money for lodging and to care for this man, the Samaritan does. And then the innkeeper takes care of him. Luke knows the word innkeeper, but he doesn't use it here. But you all are clever. I know you're clever. You know about inference, right? You're like, hey, Ken, there's no word for innkeeper here, but there is an inn. Ha-ha! It said, Luke says, you read it, Ken, there's no room in the inn. If there's an inn, there must be an innkeeper. And that's another problem. Unfortunately, because the story is so traditional and we're just kind of in love with the sound of it, we've taken a translation from hundreds and hundreds of years ago, and we've just kept it, even though it's wrong. The word they use for inn is kataluma. It's not pendakion. It's kataluma. Kataluma has a definite meaning. Kataluma is not a hotel. It's not a Best Western. Cataluma is a guest room. It's the room that you have in your home when guests or strangers show up, or for storage when no one's around. That's the Cataluma. So when Luke says there's no room at the inn, it's not a hotel. There's no room in the guest house. See, what's happening here is that Joseph and Mary have come into town, and they're not searching hotels and motels. They don't really exist. They go to Joseph's family members, and they're late. It's in the middle of the night. They wake the guy up. He gets out, and they're like going through how they're related, like second cousins, third, I don't know, and they figure it out. But the man's not a magician. Cataluma's full. The family is already there. Then scholars say two things are possible for this homeowner. He either allows the family to stay inside the home, where animals are often kept. A manger would be. And so the man opens his home. Or, and I love this possibility, there are ancient witnesses who say Jesus wasn't born in a barn, which you'll never find in the text. He was born in a cave. So the Proto-Evangelion of James, it's an early witness, Origen, and Justin Martyr, they all say Jesus was born in a cave. Many peasant homes were built either into caves or they were right close by, and that's where they kept their animals. So what's happening is Mary and Joseph are showing up, and it's late, and the man, he can't wave his wand, but he also doesn't just tell them to get lost. He either allows them in to where the animals are, or he takes them to this cave close by where his animals are. Mother Teresa says, you and I are not capable of great acts. You and I are not capable of great acts. We shouldn't use the word great about ourselves. She says, we are capable, though, of small acts done with great love. We're not capable of great things, you and I, but we're capable of small things done with great, great love. I had a really weird Sunday a couple of Sundays ago. We had a beautiful Sunday at church on Sunday morning. The choir was singing Rudder's Magnificat, not the glorious, but it was glorious. And it was gorgeous, and it was perfect. And then I got to go home. I didn't have to preach, so I wasn't like, ugh. And Melissa and the kids were off in the afternoon, which was weird. And I had 3 hours that were mine. Mine. That never happens. And I have all these things to do all the time. So I had the entire afternoon mapped out, and it was fabulous. I don't know if you remember that day, but it was raining, not an Oregon rain, but this was an aggressive, this was a mean rain. It was a day to stay home, but I'm sitting there about to start my stuff, and I get a text. And Melissa has, I think they are second cousins. She has family that's moved into the area. They're young, and they're in Portland. And Sarah texts me, and she says, can you help with a chicken coop? We have an emergency. I'm like, emergency and chicken coop are not words that go together for me. But she said, yeah, we have friends that gave us this chicken coop for Christmas, but we can't move it. We need help. Can you help? And they said, can you help? And I hate that. Because they did not say, would you love to help? Would it be your joy to help move a chicken coop? Because I could say, no, it would not. They said, can you help? And I'm like, oh, fine, it's a chicken coop. How bad can it be? Right? An hour or less. I don't know what you think of as a chicken coop. This is the chicken coop. Objects may appear larger when you show up. Southwest Portland, I show up. Took 6 of us in the pouring rain to get this thing on this metal trailer. Now, I don't know how stable this looks to you on this trailer, because then I do a second stupid thing, because obviously I'm going to have to help them, once they get to Northeast Portland. And I go, you know what? I'll follow behind. I'll make sure nothing happens. No, it's okay. It doesn't fall, but it's like, woo, going. It's like the guy in the parade who's like, I'll go behind the horses. No one's doing that. Nothing good could have happened following this thing, but we make it. We go through Southeast Portland crawling. We're on Powell. There's a Naomi's Organic Farm Store with rainbow flags. That doesn't happen in Canby. I pass a Lutheran church next to a Chalice marijuana dispensary, following a chicken coop. I'm having my most Portlandia Sunday afternoon. But here's what was remarkable for me. Here's what was remarkable. We're stopped at the 205 bridge at that underpass, and the light is just forever. And so I'm sitting there, and it's pouring down, and there's this homeless woman. She's old, she's in rags, she doesn't have teeth, and she's sitting there, and she's miserable. And there's this guy who's walking, and he's well-dressed. He's got this umbrella. Normally we don't do umbrellas. This was an umbrella day. And he is moving, he is booking it. When he's getting close, she jumps up, and she kind of blocks his path, and she's sort of pointing at him. My window's up. I can't hear anything. He stops a little bit. He does. But then he does the most amazing thing. Instead of moving away, instead of running around her like she's not there, he steps in towards her, and he includes her in this umbrella that he's got. It's not a big one. I can tell that it's getting him a little bit wet now. And I don't know what they're talking about. I don't know if he gave her anything. He probably couldn't give her what she really needed, even if he could. But instead of stepping back or away, he stepped in, and he just treated her with this human dignity. It wasn't a great act. It was a small one. But it was done with great kindness. And I remember driving away thinking, we're going to be okay. We're going to be okay. They were scratching at his door like animals in the night. Go away, he growled, pulling up the furs over his head, sinking down more deeply into the warmth of his straw bed. See, he had been dreaming. He had been dreaming of another life, a past life, when his daughter was younger and used to laugh at every face he'd make, and his wife was younger and didn't laugh at every failure, his every mistake. He was dreaming of a life without camels that spit, men bedded down in that pit, no ins, only outside, the night sky filled with every star under heaven. And when he went away to that cave where his animals lay, and he lifted his face up into that light, and it poured over him heavy and bright. Everything seemed possible, everything, even for him. But there it was again. They were scratching at his door like animals in the night. So like a man itching for a fight, he tore himself out of that dream. Expecting men with camels from long distance travels, he slammed open the door, but there they stood, this young couple in obvious trouble, their eyes pleading for help. But when he saw the way that they held each other, he knew exactly who they were. An echoing reverie reverberating through memory. They were ancient, these two entwined, as close as God's breath hovering over the waters, as full of life as God's word searing and singing the world into shape. When he looked into Joseph's face, he saw the look of every other man in his place, wanting to scream inside, run away and hide, but he was not going to let that show, not going to let anyone know. So instead, he adopted the Father's face, once worn, never entirely displaced, an appearance, an assurance that he was not going to leave her side, and he would do something, anything to provide. The old man, seeing this, inside felt one shoe shift and slip off the foot of his heart. And then seeing the young woman's hands, in her hands, the hands of every other mother as she stands there, strong hands cradled around the baby in her belly. More to display than defend, because she had walked over 80 miles across wilderness, through fear, past every shame. So her eyes stared into his, unblinking, thinking she was done looking down. She knew the sound of her own name. And somehow, somewhere, the second shoe slipped. His heart, now hallowed, humbled, on holy ground. He thought about all the others at his door, tired travelers, rich but poor in timing, having more of everything than him, except this Cataluma was his the keys to this tiny kingdom. Before he could bark, there was no room. Crushing this late-coming, sleep-interrupting bride and groom, there was another scratching sound. But this sound came not from the door, but from within. The scratching sound came from inside of him, deep inside his discalced heart, now tender and feeling again for the first time since he could remember when. And so like he was sleepwalking, like he was dreaming of another life, he told them to put their money away, to save it for some other day. And then he took them out past the camels that spit, past the men bedded down in their pit. He took them away to the cave where his animals lay, under the night sky, naked and filled with every star under heaven. And when he lifted his face up into that light, and it poured over them thick, heavy, and bright, he knew everything was possible. Everything. Even for them. In that moment, silent, holy night.